My name is Megan Loker. I'm a employed student at Western Colorado University. So I'm currently enrolled in the Master's of Science in Ecology and the Master's of Environmental Management program. My MEM project is based on restoring a historic floodplain. So we're out here at the Cold Harbor Ranch, a little bit east of Gunnison. And back in the day, this used to be a really connected floodplain wetland area. And since then, we've graded for Highway 50 and for a railroad line that goes right through this area. So it's kind of messed with the balance of the wetlands that used to be here. Given our location in the Gunnison Valley, we have a lot of snowmelt because we're a headwaters area. So as the water comes down from the mountains, it's melting, it's coming through here. We just want to make sure that it's slowed a little bit so it can become the area versus just running through really quickly. When the land was donated by Butch Clark, he wanted to make sure that the land was looked after. So most of the acreage here was enrolled in an NRCS program, the National Resources Conservation Service. That just means that there's a little bit more restriction on how you can use the land. We're just looking at the impacts of 10 beaver dam analogs, or BDAs, that the past student who did this project had a bunch of volunteers come out and help install out on the ranch. BDAs, beaver dam analogs, they're basically when you don't have beavers in the area, because we didn't think we did at the time, to my knowledge. They are supposed to mimic what a real beaver dam would be, but obviously they're not as intricate because beavers have all day to think about making dams. They're low-tech process-based restoration. It's one technique of doing that. So the version that we did, you have the bottom of your stream bed going like this. You basically just take really big posts, put them in vertically. You could walk on these. It's kind of crazy how stable it is. And then you harvest some willows and you weave the willows in between the posts. And then you can add some mud or some other just material that you find, natural materials, of course. They're just meant to slow down the water. So as the water is going through the irrigation ditch, it's slowed and moves into the surrounding lands. Just anecdotally for me, looking at old photos and looking at the way the landscape is now, I feel like they're working, but that's really subjective. But we did have a beaver move in. We had some really cool photos from a game camera we had out there from a Western class, actually. We're still working on the vegetation, so we're actually able to see if the composition of plants is changing as you go further away from the water itself. Because if the wetland plants are kind of growing further and further away from your actual source of water, then you know that water is really getting slowed and spread out. And there's little tiny airleaf balsam root, which is pretty cool because they're over here. I can't speak quantitatively to this, but I really don't remember there being airleaf balsam root over here last year. And there's already a good few leaves, which is pretty exciting. It's weird to me, the stark difference between what should be a really wet area, but it's just been cut so much with the erosion, which right now is fine, but you could see how eventually it might pose an issue for the Highway 50. On a broad scale, wetland, floodplain restoration makes a huge difference when you're talking about wildfire mitigation, when you're talking about flooding, or preventative measures for flooding and wildfires, because if your area is moister for longer, you're not seeing as many droughts because you're holding onto the water for longer. I think that's going to be a really important aspect, at least in the West. The people and organizations that helped to fund and support this research were Butch Clark and the Butch Clark family, the Clark School at Western Colorado University, the Employees Program, SaveTheFrogs.com, and Cold Harbor.